In 2000, one decision changed the future of entertainment forever. A small, struggling company walked into a meeting with one simple offer. They were willing to sell their entire business. One of the biggest companies in the world once had the chance to buy the future for just $50 million. They listened, they smiled, and then they laughed. This might be the most expensive no in business history. That future was Netflix. Back in 2000, Blockbuster wasn't just successful, it was untouchable. With over 9,000 stores and more than 60 million customers, it completely dominated the movie rental industry. If you wanted to watch a movie at home, there was really only one option: Blockbuster. The business itself was incredibly profitable. Customers paid a few dollars to rent a movie, but that wasn't where the real money came from. The real profit came from late fees. If you returned a movie late, you were charged extra for every single day. And over time, those fees added up to nearly $800 million a year. In fact, about 16% of Blockbuster's entire revenue came from people simply forgetting to return movies on time. Which meant something strange. The company actually made more money when customers had a bad experience. People hated late fees. It was frustrating to pay more in penalties than the cost of the rental itself. But for years, there was no real alternative. And that frustration quietly built up in the background. Netflix saw that frustration as an opportunity. What if one small mistake cost you $40 and ended up destroying a billion-dollar company? In the late 1990s, Reed Hastings rented a movie from a local video store. It wasn't anything special, just a copy of Apollo 13. But like many people, he forgot to return it on time. And when he finally brought it back, he was hit with a late fee of around $40 for a single movie. But Hastings saw something different. He didn't just see a late fee, he saw a broken system. Instead of charging per rental, they introduced a completely different idea, a subscription model with no late fees. You could order DVDs online, receive them at home, and return them whenever you wanted. It was slower, but it was simpler and far less stressful. Netflix's model threatened all of this. Infinite inventory in centralized warehouses. No late fees. No geographic limits. Subscription pricing instead of per rental fees. And most importantly, scalable through technology rather than physical expansion. Netflix launched with subscription pricing. Pay a flat monthly fee, rent unlimited DVDs with no due dates or late fees. Initially $15.95 per month for unlimited rentals, though you could only have a limited number out at once. And the ultimate advantage: subscription created lock-in. Canceling meant you lost access to the entire service. Inertia kept people subscribed even during months they barely used it. Blockbuster had zero customer stickiness. You could stop renting for months without penalty. More importantly, subscription revenue was predictable. Blockbuster never knew if customers would rent one movie or 10 next month. Netflix knew exactly how many subscribers they had and could predict revenue with high accuracy. This predictability enabled long-term planning and investment. But at that time, Netflix was still struggling financially. They needed help. So Reed Hastings went to Blockbuster and offered a partnership, or a full acquisition, for just $50 million. The idea was simple. Netflix would run Blockbuster's online business, and Blockbuster would promote Netflix in its stores. Together, they could dominate both physical and digital rental. But there was one thing Netflix didn't say. A problem back then, but not for long. In 2000, internet speeds were slow. Streaming video was impossible for most consumers. DVDs by mail was the only technologically feasible alternative to physical rental. Blockbuster looked at this and concluded physical stores would dominate for decades. Why invest in an inferior experience, waiting days for DVDs when customers could drive to a store and get movies immediately? Netflix also knew streaming wasn't ready yet, but they were building toward it. DVDs by mail was always a stepping stone to digital delivery. The real asset Netflix was building wasn't the DVD distribution network. It was the customer relationship, the recommendation algorithm, and the subscription model. But Blockbuster didn't see it that way. To them, Netflix looked like a small, unprofitable company with an inconvenient idea. To them, convenience meant one thing: walking into a store and leaving with a movie in minutes. What they didn't realize was that their biggest profits were blinding them. Late fees were too sweet to give up. And so, they rejected the deal. What Blockbuster failed to understand was that their entire business was built on physical limitations. Limited inventory, limited locations, limited access. Netflix, on the other hand, was building something completely different. A system without those limits. No stores, no late fees, no boundaries. And then came the internet. As technology improved, Netflix evolved from mailing DVDs to streaming content instantly. Suddenly, the biggest advantage Blockbuster had, physical stores, became its biggest weakness. Meanwhile, Netflix invested in data and algorithms. They built recommendation systems to help customers discover movies. They analyzed viewing patterns to understand preferences. They created personalized experiences that made every subscriber's Netflix feel unique. When broadband finally made streaming possible in 2007, Netflix was already miles ahead. They had over 7 million subscribers, years of user behavior data, and algorithms that understood exactly what people wanted to watch. So when the moment came, they didn't need to rebuild their business. They simply flipped a switch and added streaming to what already existed. And to the user, it felt completely seamless. Because behind the scenes, Netflix had been preparing for this for years. The world had already started to shift. Internet speeds were improving, streaming was becoming real, and Netflix was ready. Blockbuster tried to adapt, but it was too late. Their entire system was too big, too slow, and too dependent on a model that no longer worked. In 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. And Netflix, the company they once laughed at, became one of the most powerful media companies in the world. Sometimes the biggest threats don't look like threats at all. They look small, unproven, easy to ignore. But if they're built for what's coming next, ignoring them can cost everything. But if it's built on the future, ignoring it can cost everything. The video rental king who laughed Netflix out of the room became a punchline. The money-losing startup became Netflix. And $50 million became the most expensive no in business history.